So, hey, y'all, hey, and welcome back to another session of Meditations with Marigny. So, today I am actually sitting in the space that I am going to be calling home for the next year. and if one thing that I thought about when I looked at doing this video, I said if people haven't noticed anything else about me, they have to notice that I do love the outdoors. I am so in my element when I'm as close as I can be to Earth natural components. So I saw this courtyard outside, and I said, this is a neat place where the scholars can come and sit and have a good day. But anyway, to get to our topic, I want to follow up on what we talked about on yesterday. And that is the topic for yesterday. I ended up naming that, like, is remarriage dead? Is the possibility of finding love again for a second or third time, is it unreachable? Is it something that cannot be obtained? And I liken it to my ability to be able to teach scholars who typically are labeled as or identified as students who, quote unquote, cannot learn. And I am, one of the things we talked about today in one of our PDs is that I just believe that every child can learn. I believe that it's just based upon how we teach. And it's also based upon how they receive the information that is given to them. So when I think about it, and I don't know if the lighting is good on this, but when I think about it, I liken it to how we talk about relationships. And so when I gave some additional thought to the video that I did on yesterday, I wanted to give some additional context to that. I wanted to give not just foundation, because I think that for my channel, I've laid a good foundation. I think now I want to put up some walls and I want to put a few windows in, if you will. I'm a DIY kind of girl, so I like to build things. So if we think about relationally, there are some components that I feel, for instance, that we did not know to do when we were in our 20s. We did not understand to do when we were in our 30s. And now that we're in our 40s, our 50s, and some people in their 60s, based upon my algorithms, I believe that now there are some concepts that we know to do a little bit better and a little bit differently. There are some relationships that had to grow through the growing pains. You had to be stretched. You had to go through surgeries within those relationships in order to actually be able to see that they are going to benefit you now. And as I spoke on yesterday, there are many people that want relationships, but they don't want to do the work that goes along with it. Well, in that process, we all know that there is work that has to be done for anything. Even with me transitioning back into the classroom, this is my first year on the high school level. I am teaching at one of the most disadvantaged schools in the city. Today we learned that 85% of our students come from low income or some type of poverty-based type atmosphere, which means that the challenges that are going to walk through those doors in a week is going to be difficult. Well, that's the same way that it is with some of us in second and third relationships. Those challenges that came from the previous relationships, those are the things that built and molded that person into who they are in order for them to be the way that they are today. So when we look at our situations and the ability of dating and what that looks like, we have to look at what components do that person bring to the table that might be good for us. What components are components that might stretch us and grow us out of our comfort zone? And then also, what components do we know are just beyond what we can actually achieve and or do? So one of the things that I really wanted to delve into is, if kind of thinking about people saying, well, I don't want to deal with this and I don't want to deal with that and I don't want to deal with this. Now, let me relatively speak, saying that I'm not speaking of taking on a project. and I can say that for myself, because typically I would look at things and be like, okay, how can I fix this, or how can I make this better? That's my natural component that I bring to the table. That's an additive that my mate is going to get, period. But when I say look at how I can make it better, at this stage in my life, I don't want to fix anything. What I want to do is see how I can bring what talents and gifts and knowledge that I have, skill sets that I have, that I can then help them to be better in their life skill sets. So, for instance, I like to use my parents because I think that they are a very practical couple to look at. I think they are a very practical couple to see how when two people come together and they work as a team, then they are able to accomplish anything that they like. You guys know from watching my previous videos that my father could not read and write. My dad could not read, but my mother could. So he brought all his contracts home. He brought his employee evaluations home, and he gave my mother the opportunity to look over it, read it to him. And then he went back and he made the decision. Oh, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do that. But they worked as a team. And so, in them working as a team, she helped him to negotiate contracts for his cleaning business. She helped him to negotiate contracts for different organizations that were looking at him coming in and doing work for them. So, she helped him to negotiate contracts as a mechanic. So, they worked together as a team to accomplish the common goal of them being together as a couple. Somewhere in that process of life, we have lost those type of connections in relationship. And I will say, I want to make sure that we understand, because people are now talking about women having more education and they're being smarter and they're doing this. My mother was always more advanced academically than my father. That was not a, it's not a big thing. But what she never did, and ladies, this might be a tip for you, is I never saw her make him feel any kind of way about that, because he was so much bigger in so many other areas that that was not even a conversation or a component in our household. It was almost like she protected him in that area to assure that he always shined whenever he went out. And that's what we're supposed to do as partners, as teammates, as people who are in relationship. We should be in a place where we are now supporting those who are around us to a place that it's not that we're carrying them on our backs. So I want to put a pin in that. Men, oftentimes, you may choose a woman that you think that you have to save instead of you having to support. And I want to clarify that. As the head of the house and the man that is going to be decision maker, you all are always going to be problem solvers, but you don't necessarily need somebody that you have to save her. You just might need somebody that needs a little bit of guidance, and you can say, hey baby, if I was making this decision, I would do it like this and this. Or you can kind of give her some input on the decisions that she's already making. What I have learned and what I see is that in many relationships where um men are kind of burnout at this stage, if they've been in something for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I want to make sure that I don't take away from marriages that are good and or strong, because I am pro marriage. But what I have seen is that sometimes people have taken on the responsibility of a woman because that's their natural role as a man. And what he has had to do is carry her for the entire portion of the relationship. It has not been a partnership where they came together and they worked together in order to be able to make sure that they were able to accomplish what they needed to as a couple. So you want to make sure, and I think also, as I'm talking with men, especially those that have been married and they're now not married anymore, they're like, I don't want to do that no more. Like, nobody wants to carry someone completely. So that is a conversation that does need to happen. You know, if he carries primarily all of the financial load, then somewhere in that equation, you as the female or as the woman, you should be handling the vacations. You should be making sure that you set aside the emergency fund. Like at any given time, if especially for those that he's carrying like 100%. If you're not contributing anything to the household, if he comes to you, you ought to be able to say, baby, we got $10,000 over here. You know, if he says, hey, the air conditioner broke or this happened, you know, I need to figure out so and so and so. But also, as a team, you all should be talking about that, and he should be knowledgeable of that is available as well. I do not believe in this new concept where he is taking care of the full burden of the financial component in the household, and there is no contribution to that, unless it is a financial component where when she came into his fold, that was already the process that was in place. Um, but even if it is, ladies, just know that there should be some level of contribution. And even if he's a millionaire, he wants to know that that component is important to you as it is important to him. So I wanted to tap into that piece. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is we have to stop looking for people that we feel are already at their highest peak. There is a difference between someone who is still working and still developing, and I talked about that on yesterday when I said that I've done the work on myself, so I'm healed to a certain place. Now there are some things that still bother me, that still, as people are using the word trigger, that trigger me, and if they do, I have a conversation with people when I'm talking to them. I don't like the way that you did this, or I don't like the way that this made me feel, but I'm not anticipating for that person to be fully knowledgeable of the things that may or may not bother me. And I'm not expecting to be fully knowledgeable of the things that may or may not bother that person. But what you want to look at is it a person that is willing to work on making the change? Because there's a difference between somebody that says, oh, well, that's just the way you took it. Or somebody that says, oh, well, this is just the way I am. I always been like this, and this the way I'm always be. And that's why many of those people are going to always be right where they are. So I do think that we have to use some human element to give people grace to make mistakes, to give people grace to grow. And I think that that is where relationships are going to find their beneficial partners, when we take the time to allow each one of us to be authentic in our own selves, and be comfortable enough with our mate or with our person that they can truly be themselves. And we can say, now, babe, when you did that right there, I was like, what is he doing? And y'all laugh about it or talk about it. But it should not be a component where it is so judgmental that it is to the point that it causes a problem with every relationship. So I understand, sometimes men say, well, why is it that she's single? I think about that with myself. People could really say, well, why is she single? I'm single in some ways because I'm not fluidly dating. I am not putting myself out there in that manner to it put the invitation out that I am dating seriously. As I'm dating, or if somebody asks me out on a date, or we go out to dinner or something of that sort, we have conversations about certain things. And sometimes we go back and we revisit the date again. And based upon our conversation, it just depends on also what the man is looking for. Because again, if you choose to walk in a level of abstinence, you're not going to maintain his attention for a long period of time anyway. Because there's somebody else where you say, I'm not walking in that vein. There are 5 other women that say that they will. And honestly, the choice at this point, the choice has always been the man's choice. But the choice at this point, what I see is that many people are competing against, when women are competing against women. The issue, I won't even say issue, but I think the standard that I have for myself is I'm only competing against me. I'm only trying to be the better me that I can be. One of the things that I looked at is, you could get into things and you can start saying stuff like, is my hair long enough? Should I put on eyelashes? Maybe I should go and get fingernails. Maybe I should go get some enhancements. Maybe I should get a BBL. Maybe, no, be the best version of you that you can be. And if that version of you is who you are pleased with, then at some point you will attract the person that is attracted to what you bring to the table. And if you're not attracting that, then you just have to look at yourself and say, what is it that I might need to work on? Or how is it that I may speak to him? Or do I use proper language? Am I um, supportive enough. Like, I look at all of those components and I try to make sure that I am equitable in how I examine what my expectations are and what I can bring to the table. So, and I'm doing the same thing for any young man that I come in contact with and that I have the opportunity to possibly date. So, with that being said, just take today and know that